They were victims of one of the worst crimes of our age.
Some of them people went run to the church, that they burned the church, and the people in it.
The genocide, it's not a sad event belonging to our history. It's part of our daily life.
The tragedy happened in what is now Turkey, but to this day, Turkey goes to great lengths to deny there was a genocide.
There has not been a genocide, and if people, for political motivations, want to use it, they can go ahead and use it, but they take the risk of course, influencing their relations with Turkey.
This is the story of what happened when the most powerful nation on earth was on the verge of recognizing the Armenian genocide. It is a story of massacre and betrayal. From the beginning, America was the Armenians' land of hope. Driven from their ancient homeland, they found shelter here. Rahan Kachian was a young girl when she arrived in New York. She'd witnessed the destruction of her family by Turkish troops.
In Turkey, we fight for our lives because you never know, second minute they're going to kill you or they're going to take you. But when I came to the United States, everybody, they don't afraid to walk in the street.
The Armenians who reached Ellis Island were the lucky few. They built a new community from the remnants of shattered villages.
This is all my family. We were only a small village, maybe 50 families, but each family maybe had 25 members because they all lived together. The brothers and the father and the children, they all lived together. And we had a school and we had a church.
Down the generations, survivor stories are passed on. It is their weapon against forgetting and denial.
Michael, this is my room. When I came, I slept on top of the deck.
So you slept on top of the top bed?
Yeah, I slept for one night.
But the beds were like this?
Yeah. No. I remember, even I was so young, but I remember it's in my mind. I imagine my house, and I see they were all surrounded with Kurdish men and Turkish soldiers, and they all rushed in the house, in the village. They took everything what they could carry, everything, and the animals and whatever it was in the house, and some houses they burned. And some people, they run to the church. They burned the church.
The Armenians were a threatened minority in Ottoman Turkey. They were prosperous, Christians with a distinct and separate culture. They'd experienced massacre before, but nothing like what would happen in 1915.
My family was all massacred. After they finished, they all killed them and put them in a mass grave. And whoever was left, the children and elderly women, we ran away. And my father was home that time. He ran to the woods. Army soldiers, they went after him. And they killed him and they cut his head off. Oh, we cried. We cried. What can we do? We hugged. We took the head and we cried. And with our hands, we dig the ground. We bury him.
But travel to the land from which the Armenians were driven and you hear a different history. For the Turks, no less than the Armenians, are haunted by the past. Turkey defends the Ottoman rulers accused of genocide as if they were still alive.
A nation can only be hurt by being accused of something it hasn't done, and its children and grandchildren will be psychologically affected. There is no point in acknowledging something that didn't happen.
To use the word genocide about the events of 85 years ago is to be accused of damning an entire nation.
Accusing people of a genocide, of wanting to eradicate a whole group of people because of who they are, and these are people that we've lived together for hundreds of years. It's absolutely incorrect, inaccurate, and we feel very insulted.
Almost everywhere I went in Turkey, the refrain of official denial was the same.
This so-called genocide is certainly unfounded, has no factual basis, and there is certainly not enough evidence and case for those who are promoting it.
There is in this battle for truth a vital American connection. A man revered by Armenians, a Jewish New Yorker.
The American ambassador here in Istanbul, Henry Morgenthau, gathered together evidence of massacre and rape and passed it on to the State Department in Washington. He was basing his reports on evidence being sent in from missionaries around the country. Here's just one example of the kind of thing he was being told. There appears, in short, to be a steady policy to exterminate these people, but to deny the charge of massacre. Their destruction from so-called natural causes seems decided on.
The militant nationalists who ruled Turkey in 1915 had long regarded the Armenians as a treacherous minority. It was the entry of Turkey into World War I which created the conditions in which they could be removed. Thriving Armenian communities would vanish from the face of the earth. Neither women nor children would be spared. Some Armenian nationalists had sided with the invading Russians. An entire people were declared enemies.
Whatever crimes the most perverted instincts of the human mind can devise, and whatever refinements of persecution and injustice the most debased imagination can conceive, became the daily misfortunes of this devoted people. I am confident that the whole history of the human race contains no such horrible episode as this.
But Henry Morgenthau wasn't alone. Even some who were Turkey's allies were horrified. One young German risked execution to compile a photographic record of what he was witnessing. Armin Wegner was a medical officer in the German army. He wrote, "I was seized by terror, overcome by dizziness, as if the earth were collapsing on both sides of me into an abyss." One of the few Turkish historians to challenge the official view says the state used starvation as well as execution to kill the Armenians.
The Armenians were rounded up, organized into convoys, men, women, children, old men, old women, and began to be deported in huge convoys under conditions of horrible squalor and oppression. On the way, they began to be attacked not just by spontaneously operating bandits, but by death squads and vengeful, vindictive tribes organized by the Unionists' special organization.
In other words, the government's agents.
The government's agents.
For the first time in the 20th century, cattle trucks would be used to carry people to desolation.
The real purpose of the deportation was robbery and destruction. It really represented a new method of massacre. When the Turkish authorities gave the orders for these deportations, they were merely giving the death warrant to a whole race. They understood this well, and in their conversations with me, they made no particular attempt to conceal the fact.
Turkey says none of this proves there was any intention to destroy the Armenians.
You may think it was genocide, but that doesn't change the historical facts. Genocide is a legal term, and its definition has many requirements to classify an act as genocide. First of all, if your intention was to exterminate a nation, no matter whether you killed hundreds or just a single person, your action would be considered genocide. But the Ottoman state never had such an intention.
Turkey points to its archives as proof that there's no written evidence of genocide. No piece of paper which says, "Kill the Armenians." But amid the millions of files in the Ottoman archives lies a remarkable document. Agreed by the cabinet in late spring 1915, it is a piece of paper ordering the deportation of the Armenian population. Men, women and children were designated a threat to state security.
This is not a decision by a single individual or a group. It's an order made by the state. It says here that this decision has been taken to protect the army during the war from being stabbed in the back.
Can I just ask you as a Turkish person, but also as a historian, how you feel looking at this document now?
I'm an archivist. For me, all documents are the same. It's for the historians to assess them. I'm not very much interested in what the historians say, but there is such an order that was issued and implemented during the war.
In Turkey, I travelled in search of a vanished people. I'd heard the official history, but now I was travelling to the places where Armenians had once formed vibrant communities. This is the area near Van in eastern Turkey, which was at the heart of Armenian life. Armenian families once crossed this lake to attend Mass at one of the most sacred Christian sites in the Middle East. Here on Akhtamar Island, evidence of a rich Armenian heritage. An Armenian king built the first church here in the 10th century. The Church of the Holy Cross is a cultural treasure. Yet the church interior has been allowed to lapse into ruin. And so time and the weather do their work.
There hasn't been an Armenian mass here since the First World War, yet this church is the most tangible reminder of an Armenian presence in this area stretching back 2 millennia. The Turkish government has allowed the church to fall into ruin. It's perhaps too uncomfortable a reminder of a vanished people.
We met some Turkish sightseers, a young couple from nearby Van. They were citizens of a modern secular republic. I wondered what they'd been taught about the past.
Do you know what happened to the Armenians in this area?
What happened?
Yes.
When they were here, we and they, like a brother or like a sister, a friendship with together. But I don't know what happened, and they went their countries, and we stayed here.
This area is full of villages once occupied by Armenians. Today the population is largely Kurdish. From 1915 onwards, as the Armenians were driven out, their homes were taken over by Kurds. I wanted to know what history the people of these villages had been taught at school by their parents. In this village, how was the deportation of the Armenians explained?
So when you were growing up in this village, did you hear from your forefathers, did you learn at school about how the Armenians were massacred? Did you learn any of that?
We never heard anything like that. Our fathers say there were no massacres against the Armenians. But we do hear about massacres now. We never heard anything bad about the Armenians at school. We were told they were advanced technologically and in human rights and things like that. They were a civilized people. I went to school for 11 years and never heard anything bad about Armenians. Turkey doesn't complain about the Armenians.
If I was going to get any sense of what had happened, I would have to speak to one of the older people.
Hello, how are you? We'd like to ask you if you remember anything about the Armenians who used to live here. Did you learn anything about them?
When we arrived here, the Armenians were leaving. I was young then, like these children. They were leaving when we arrived, and we settled here.
What did your parents tell you about what happened to the Armenians?
They killed many of us, and we killed many of them. My grandfather and father used to talk about it. Then they left.
People speak nowadays of a great slaughter of the Armenians, that the Turks tried to slaughter them. What do you remember of that time? Is that true? Was there a great slaughter?
I don't know about that. We came from Russia fighting on the way. We came here and they left. It was war.
Here in the east, bands of Armenian rebels joined the invading Russian forces. They attacked Turkish civilians and committed atrocities. When the Ottomans recaptured Van, the entire Armenian population was targeted. They only had themselves to blame, one Ottoman leader said.
There has sprung up this enormous gap between what the world knows and what the Turkish public generally knows about the Armenian question and the events of 1915. For decades and decades, nothing has been said internally. I think that by being very defensive and protective about 1915, the modern republic is actually undermining its own claims and credentials of authenticity and differentness.
People feel very strongly of being accused of such a huge humanitarian crime that we do not feel we committed, we did not commit. And I think there's something to be said for raising future generations in a peaceful way and try to cooperate with neighbors and looking forward rather than digging up difficult memories where we also lost a lot of family.
In all of this, it is the witness of those who endured that challenges denial. In Beirut, there is a community founded by survivors. Their forefathers were victims of the death transports. The Armenians of Lebanon want the world to recognize the genocide. And there are still voices here who can speak of what happened on that terrible journey into the desert. Bedros Gazulian is a 96-year-old survivor of the slaughter. He still speaks in Turkish, the language of the country he was banished from as a boy.
70 kişi vardı bizim aile, büyük aile.
Our family was a large family,
Kaç aile?
very large.
Büyüdük. Yani
There were about 70 people in my family. Only 7 or 8 survived.
Yani 60-70 kişi vardı.
61 of our family were killed during deportation.
Hesap ettik. Anam ne desin? Ağladı ağladı.
As for my mother, she cried all the time and died crying.
Zaten orada öldü dediler.
She already knew about my sister's death.
Öldü oğlan.
My brother died of hunger on the road. What could my mother do? She had to give away my other sister and other brother for adoption.
Bir yerde evlatlık verdi gitti zaten. Her gördüğünde ölü, sen seni ölü görüyorsun.
I have seen death.
Görüyorsun sen seni. İnsanlıkını görüyorsun.
But I was so young then, only 9 or 10. I felt completely broken. All I've seen around me is death. Death and nothing else.
Zaten azsın.
I hardly saw any people alive.
Perişansın. Yürüdüğümüz yerler...
We were hungry and miserable.
Yerden nereye yürüdük?
We walked forever.
Yürüyemezsen...
If you did not walk, you were beaten and killed and burnt. What have I seen? I've seen death.
O ki sakatlık ediyor, ölüdür.
The world was told of these horrors, but did not intervene, even though the accounts sent back to America by diplomats caused public outrage.
Greater misery could not be imagined. The dead and the dying are everywhere. 2 or 3 small children may be seen weeping over the dead body of their mother. Other children are lying sprawled upon the ground, dead or in convulsions. One sees dead bodies in all directions and on every road. The whole country is one vast slaughterhouse.
Turkey denies the central government authorized any massacres. As for those who starved to death or died from disease, there is this explanation.
The deaths of women and children on the roads was just the result of problems due to a relocation on a large scale. The state took every measure to prevent this, but of course it's not easy to relocate a large population.
Relocation. From village, town and city, they were forced south towards the mountain ranges and deserts. On the way, they were attacked by bandits and Turkish troops and policemen. The refugees travelled vast distances.
We've now left Beirut and are heading into the Bekaa Valley, and right all the way up here through Syria was part of the Trail of Desolation, along which Armenian families thrown out of Turkey had to come, and of course thousands, tens of thousands died along the way.
The voice sings of a people destroyed. Countless numbers of Armenian women and children were abducted. They only survived by abandoning their identity, taking Turkish names and converting to Islam. Elizabeth Simunian lost her parents and would spend her childhood in orphanages.
When we were exiled, instead of killing us, the order was, take them like sheep to the mountain and let them die from thirst and hunger themselves. I remember 2 girls. When they died, they threw them to the side of the road, under the rain, into the street.
Of course, relocation of such a big population is very difficult, and I wish it had never happened. But you have to bear the circumstances in mind. What is important here is that the Ottoman government did not have the intention of killing those 450,000 Armenians who were being relocated.
I have no doubts whatsoever that they were responsible. They were conscious, they were deliberate, they knew what they were doing.
For 85 years, the Armenians have campaigned to have the genocide acknowledged. They're frustrated that powerful countries like America and Britain join Turkey in denial. Each new generation is taught the stories of 1915. It is a national obsession, born of loss and frustration.
The genocide, it's not a sad event belonging to our history. It's part of our daily life. It's with us. We live it as a painful experience in the schools, in the churches, in the families. It's not something pertaining to our history. We carry with us the genocide and its implications. You cannot imagine an Armenian life in all its manifestations, dimensions and aspects without this impact-making presence of the Armenian genocide.
There is a saying among survivors that to have the genocide denied is to die twice.
The slaughter of the Armenians took place more than 3/4 of a century ago in a crumbling empire. Yet today, 86 years on, the battle to have the genocide recognized is being waged with passionate intensity. It's being fought out in the corridors of power all over the world, and wherever there's an Armenian community.
key battleground is the United States, which welcomed so many survivors. If the genocide is ever to be recognized by the rest of the world, Armenians believe America must lead the way. Central to the Armenian case are America's own historical records. The documents sent by the American ambassador warning that Armenians were being exterminated.
What we're asking for is an affirmation of the historical record of the United States from that era that clearly records and substantiates the fact that a genocide was committed against the Armenian people. Well, America owes it to itself to recognize its own record. The diplomatic files are so extensive and so thorough that we base our knowledge of the Armenian genocide in the main on what the American diplomats reported. And in this respect, affirming the Armenian genocide as a historical event is nothing more than recognizing one's own history, a piece of American history.
To try and make that happen, the Armenians pressed Congress to vote to recognize the genocide. The Armenian lobby had a strong weapon: votes in some key congressional districts.
The November elections were coming up, and there were some hotly contested races, in particular one in Southern California, where the local Armenian American community could have made a difference.
The Clinton White House was known to oppose the move, despite the fact that Bill Clinton had at one time promised to use the word genocide. But Congress pressed on.
The House clearly had moved to the point where the majority of U.S. representatives had come to recognize the facts for what they were, and were quite ready by that point to adopt a resolution affirming the U.S. record and recognizing the Armenian genocide.
Whether they accepted the facts or wanted the votes, there was now growing momentum for genocide recognition. The news was met with anger in Turkey, which dispatched a cross-party delegation of MPs to lobby Congress.
We told them that this was an absolutely unjust, inaccurate, and unfair resolution. No business of parliaments to pass a resolution like this. We went into the...
What was their response when you said that?
A lot of them actually confessed and admitted that parliaments, that a Congress should not be dealing with something that deals with history.
The congressmen may have listened to the Turkish arguments, but with the first important vote at subcommittee level approaching, those pushing genocide recognition were increasingly optimistic.
I think the longer that the members of Congress heard the Turkish MPs talk about the fact that in their opinion there was no genocide, or this did not exist, it never happened, the more the vote swung toward those of us that were wanting the recognition. And so in what they had hoped to be a very close vote ended up being a larger, quite a swing in favor of the genocide recognition bill that we were seeking as a result of the Turkish testimony, because they really are in denial.
The subcommittee voted in favor of the resolution, paving the way for a vote before the full Congress.
I was very upset, of course. I thought it was really pathetic that legislators who clearly didn't even have a passport and had never traveled anywhere in their lives were voting on something that they knew nothing about.
On the morning of the vote, the congressmen sponsoring the bill did their final tallies.
It was optimistic, the atmosphere, because we essentially were whipping, which means we go to individual members and ask them how they're going to vote. And I was convinced that we had well over 300 members on a bipartisan basis that were going to vote for this, which is a huge, maybe even two-thirds majority.
After years of campaigning, it looked as if the slaughter and deportation of the Armenians was at last going to be recognized as genocide by the legislators of the most powerful nation on earth. And then, with literally minutes left on the clock, something extraordinary happened.
The vote was coming up in the evening, and we were heading over with our staff to begin the debate, which would lead to this vote. And as we were walking up the steps of the Capitol, one of my staff members got a phone call from the Speaker's office.
That morning, the White House caved in to Turkish pressure. President Clinton called the House Speaker and asked him to withdraw the bill. Clinton's message to the Speaker was extraordinary. He cited grave national security concerns. He believed passing the resolution could endanger American lives.
By the time we got to the top of the stairs into the House chamber, they were already into other business.
And your genocide resolution was gone?
Never happened. Yeah.
So what exactly scared the leader of the free world? The answer lies in the dangerous politics of the Middle East. Here the Turks are allies who provide air bases vital for patrolling the skies over Saddam Hussein's Iraq.
So what was it, do you think, was said by the Turkish government to make him cite grave national security concerns?
Well, I don't really want to say that it was really what we have said. Of course we have said the same things.
National security, I think they also talked about American lives potentially being at risk.
That detail I do not remember, but certainly grave consequences or implications and security rights were there. But, you know...
so what do you think? What do you think it meant, grave national security concerns?
To me, if you really want my personal point of view, I think it was President Clinton's very good foresight and appreciation and evaluation of Turkey's position in the region and the value that they attach to our friendship and collaboration as a NATO ally.
Well, they were making all kinds of threats. They were saying that American soldiers were going to be in jeopardy in Turkey. You know, that the Turkish government always acts as if they're benign and their citizens are about to revolt over this issue. In other words, it's not that we have a problem if you bring up the resolution, but there are going to be demonstrations in the streets, and American tourists and American soldiers in Turkey are not going to be safe anymore, which is, to me, total garbage. I don't buy that. It's the government that is taking the position not to recognize the genocide.
But with a new president, the Armenians would have another chance. George W. Bush had made a campaign promise. The Armenians were subjected to a genocidal campaign, he'd said. If elected president, I would ensure that our nation properly recognizes the tragic suffering of the Armenian people. That was before he came to power and before his campaign against Saddam Hussein. George Bush badly needs the help of the new Turkish government. America wants to launch a land invasion of Iraq from Turkey.
You're a strategic ally and friend of the United States. And we look forward to working with you to keep the peace.
On the one hand, they speak about the human rights, their commitment to human rights, and on the other hand, you see, they fail for political reasons to recognize the genocide.
The smarter countries and the smarter people in those countries realized cooperating with Turkey and achieving stability and balance in this region was really important for all of our mutual common good. Unfortunately, others with small petty concerns didn't realize this.
The West has traditionally encouraged Armenia and then not been there when they need help. So there's no reason why they shouldn't feel betrayed. They were betrayed.
The last survivors are scattered far from their homeland. They know there's little likelihood the world will recognize the genocide while they're alive. What is left for them? Anger and bewilderment.
Sometimes I stay overnight and think why people do like the things like the way they did it. We didn't harm anybody. We built the country. We worked for them. I mean, we paid taxes. Why they did that to us?
O günü beklerim.
I will wait for the day they acknowledge it. I pray for other governments to help us. Nothing else. What else can I do?
Dua ederim.
After I die, I will be finished. But I wait for that day. I will wait till I die to hear them say, yes, we did it.
Biz bunu yaptık desinler.
The campaign against the Armenians was the first in a century that would be defined by genocide. The very law on genocide was framed by a man who'd been profoundly affected by the tragedy of the Armenians. Raphael Lemkin believed genocide was a wound against all humanity. It is denial which ensures the wound can never heal.
You can comment on tonight's programme by visiting our website at www.bbc.co.uk/correspondent. Correspondence back next Sunday, but this Wednesday there's a special edition on abuse in the Irish Catholic Church, how one man's story for Correspondent led to a bishop being sacked and a crisis in the church. That's at 11:20 on Wednesday night.